Hello, this is Sarah Zenaida Gould with the Mexican American Civil Rights Institute. I'm happy to be here today with Dr. Ricardo Romo, a noted historian and photographer, and of course, the former president of UTSA. Welcome, Dr. Romo.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Appreciate you doing this good work.
Oh, thank you. Well, today we're here to discuss your work documenting the annual Segundo de Febrero exhibit at Centro Cultural Atlan, which is nearly 50 years old. But before we launch into the artwork discussion, I was hoping that you, as a historian, could tell us a little bit about the origins of Segundo de Febrero and what we are commemorating.
Well, so let's do the history part, and basically, when it all begins, we assume with the Mexican War, and then the negotiations of the Mexican War, which end up with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, named after the town Guadalupe Hidalgo in Mexico. But I think the two things often neglected in discussing the Mexican War, and one of them is the powerful, the power of the slave states that want to expand slavery, and the occasion of the Texas Revolution, which leads to Texas separation. So we have a map there that shows what happens in 1836 is viewed by Mexicans. If you read the Mexican history books, their take on this revolution is basically it was an invasion. They were in there was tensions there, and then there was the Alamo, and then there's San Jacinto, and the next thing you know is the Treaty of San Jacinto, which basically says Texas is now part of Mexico. It was a very difficult time for Mexico to be given up so much land, but it certainly, as we will see here in this particular, that's a good map. Yes.
Okay, let me put that back up. Sorry about that. There you
That's
go.
a good map. So what happens is in 1836 to 1848, Texas becomes a republic because they basically assumed in 1836 that there would be this revolution, the Texans would take over, and they would become a part of the United States. They did not. They didn't become a part of the United States because a lot of the northern states did not want to expand slavery. So they basically said, we're not ready to accept you as a state in 1836. So for the next 10 years, Texas was a republic, and they, on their own, sort of claimed part of New Mexico, going all the way to Colorado. They're expanded. So this is their version, the Texans' version of what Texas looked like, which of course was not true and certainly not recognized by the Mexicans. So part of the early history tells us that the United States is starting to come up with this a new idea, two new ideas. One is manifest destiny, that it really, by 1845, manifest destiny is a concept, an ideology, is a powerful force that has a lot of support to claiming Mexican territory, and especially to claim it all the way to the Pacific. So there's a start here, and then the other force is the expansion of slavery. There's another example of the Texas claim, which tells you, it is a quite ridiculous plan. I mean, the idea that they could go all the way to Wyoming. But so this is sort of unresolved between 1836 and 1845. It's going to get resolved when war is declared. And by the way, the Mexicans viewed the loss of Texas, beginning at the Nueces River, which is right above the Rio Grande. There's a river right above it, and you can probably point to it. Yeah, that river there is the Nueces River. And so the Mexicans believed that their loss was from the Nueces River up to the Panhandle. So when Mexican forces were on the Rio Grande in 1845-46, they had a skirmish with soldiers who they thought were trespassing into Mexican territory. So that was the pretext for starting the war, and that Americans had crossed into had been attacked by Mexicans, and that they were in American territory, which of course Mexico didn't recognize that. So so part of the history of the war begins with this delicate balance in terms of there are now 11 slave states and 11 non-slave states. And if Texas becomes a slave state, then the slave states in the South will have extremely big numbers and power to do whatever they want. So this is the battle between the North and the South, which in fact is going to eventually lead to a civil war. If the whole idea of Texas coming in, and it did, as a slave state, made it complicated, and eventually the Mexican War is just a prelude to what's going to happen later, and that is they're going to fight because of the expansion of slavery. So I think that's how we began. Now, the Mexican War is it's a very fast war. I mean, the armies march into Mexico and conquer town after town. They go into Mexico City. Zachary Taylor goes into Mexico City and conquers Mexico City. And several things are happening. The ultimate idea is that the support for the war is absolutely, yes, we need this war because we need the Pacific. We need ports on the Pacific. What they envisioned was a railroad that connect the East with the West. And the only way, and that would expand the China trade. So if you look at the Pacific, it's basically the path to trade in China and the rest of the world. And so they were determined to get those ports on the Pacific especially California. So that was the larger picture. The bigger picture of Manifest Destiny is New Mexico's great, Arizona's great, but ultimately we need to. So when the war broke out, it was quickly started in California separately, in New Mexico separately, and soldiers are moving into the interior. So it's like a three-prong. It's soldiers going to interior Mexico, soldiers going into New Mexico, and then soldiers going into California. So the conquest of California is fast. 1847, it's already done. The conquest of New Mexico through Santa Fe is fast. And so that puts them in a situation where it's a very quick conquest. Now we have to settle the war. And the settlement is a little difficult because of anticipation that whether these states would be slave states or not, and whether they would enter as slave states or not. But the other thing that we spend the most time with is the issue of people and land and property. So the treaty's most important, the treaty has three very important sections. One of them has to do with the boundaries what will be the boundaries? Is Mexico, the U.S. is basically saying there was no battles in Colorado or Utah or Nevada, but somehow or another they said we conquered these areas. There were no major battles in Nevada, and the Mormons had already started moving into Utah. No major battles in Colorado. There were some battles in New Mexico and battles in California. But so the boundaries is a really big issue. How do we determine? And of course, they send the Nicholas Triss to negotiate this. And Nicholas Triss says, okay, what we want, this is what we want. And Mexico it has no leverage, basically. So then a treaty is, they agree upon the treaty, and the three divisions, the three sections are the most important, are the boundary. What will happen to the people living there? And they're going to have a choice of becoming U.S. citizens. They'll have a year to determine whether or not they want to become citizens. And then, of course, the issue of which states become slave states. But and actually, that's right now in the three sections of the boundaries of the treaty deal with boundary and the people, and what's going to happen to the land, that the ownership of land that Latinos have, and that's the most contested part because the boundaries are designed and no one has much say on it. But the issue of the future, so the land issue, do the Latinos own land? They got land grants from the Spanish, they got land grants from the Mexican government. Is the U.S. going to honor these land grants? And the answer is no. They didn't honor these land grants any more than they honored the hundreds and hundreds of treaties with the American Indians. I mean, they would sign a treaty with American Indians, and the next thing you know, they're shipping them off to different states. So what happens is they agreed that the Mexicans living in the U.S., that their land rights would be honored, but we see that over the next 150 years, they're still battling right now in South Texas, and especially certainly a little bit in California and New Mexico, bigger cases in South Texas, where people are saying our land was taken away. They didn't recognize the Spanish land grants. They didn't recognize Mexican land grants, and land was lost to a lot of Latinos. So I think that's one of the big issues. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is alive today because of the land issue. It's alive today because the question was, will you honor the Spanish language? They would initially said that documents would be published in English and Spanish so that the new residents that had been conquered would understand the treaty and its implications. And that was only honored briefly, and then everything went to English. So these are some of the powerful issues, and some leading to very long-standing consequences. And we still talk about whether we have a right, as in some states, including Texas, want to pass laws English only. Well, English only is a violation of the treaty. I mean, the agreement was that they would honor the language and the culture of the people. So those are the things that we see today.
And then I also wanted to ask you about the way that the treaty has been remembered now and is meaningful to Mexican Americans. Some people would say that the treaty essentially gave birth to Mexican Americans.
Can you repeat that middle point?
Yeah, yes. In the aftermath of the treaty, we had some people across the Southwest of Mexican descent now living in the United States. And so some people have said that the treaty gave birth to Mexican Americans.
Well, I think Mexican Americans evolve because they were not interested in becoming in losing their language. They weren't interested in losing their culture. They were bitter about losing their land. So it was basically the fact also of the distance between the major New England northern states and southern states. This was a frontier, and a lot of things did not reach Texas or New Mexico that were the Americanization forces for decades. So people could be. I remember my grandfather, who was a cowboy, and he went on the cattle drives, telling me one day when we were driving from South Texas to San Antonio, he said, "We have crossed the Nueces River. From here on in, it's Los Americanos." And he said everything was in Spanish because he said, this is, sort of like they had all long believed in this, the boundaries. And there are a lot of isolated communities in New Mexico that I've driven through. They have been isolated. The forces of Americanization didn't reach them. So I think Mexican Americans, yes, we became Mexican Americans by virtue of this treaty because we were neither Mexicans anymore, but we were supposed to be Americans, but the cultural differences and the worlds apart between the people who were from the North and the South and us. So yes, we could say we became Mexican-Americans because of the treaty, and that we can celebrate, in essence, how long have the communities been a Mexican-American community? Well, you could say 1848, but in Texas, you have to go to 1836 because that's when they have a new Texas society, which is no longer Mexican either. So yeah, it's certainly, I can see those arguments. Yes.
I'm just going to pull up this next map. I don't know if you want to say anything about this.
Well, the interesting thing is that we have a lot of discussion about the Latino population in the U.S. and so this particular map shows those individuals who identify not as. I mean, if you go to New York and you cannot assume that the folks there are largely Mexican American. They're Puerto Rican, they're Dominican, they're Salvadorians. Same thing for Miami. But when you go to these regions that are adjacent to the region that Mexico lost, you have pretty much, you can say San Antonio has 65% Mexican American population. There's so very few Cubans here, as an example. So that's what that map is showing, as to where those who identify as Mexican American or alone or in combination, and that says basically pretty large number. It says national 39 million. So basically, Mexicans make up of the 65 million Latinos in the U.S. Mexicans make up 40 million.
Yeah, okay. So we've talked about the origins of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo through the US-Mexican War and the subsequent impact on people of Mexican descent. When did Mexican Americans start commemorating Segundo de Febrero?
Well, that's what I like about history, is that you you never can say we know everything. And so it's a lot of work for future students, future graduate students, future PhD students like yourself, or not students but people. We just continue to dig. Probably there's I haven't seen a definitive date that says this is the first time that we celebrate the end of the war, or the creation of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, or the evolution of a Mexican American community. Uh, it's probably a relatively new thing. I grew up in San Antonio, as probably you did, and I don't recall anything until the Centro Cultural Aztlán 49 years ago said, you know, if anything is important in our lives, in our community, is in our history, is this treaty, because that's when we become Mexican Americans. The treaty is the trigger for us becoming Mexican Americans, and so that's part of the celebration that was started with Ramon Vasquez and the founders, and it's been interesting because honestly, I wish that I had been following this for the last 20 years. There's a lot of interesting art, good art. I have gone to the Centro probably over the last 5 years, but only in the last 2 years did I decide to write about it. I just went over there to enjoy art. But 2 years ago, I said, "Oh, this art is something that's so expressive. So it gives us so many explanations." And so I wrote a story 2 years ago, and then I wrote a story a year ago, and now in 26, I'm going to write a new story. And what I like about it is the art's always new and different, and it's across generations. There'll be artists there like, oh, I met some artists in their early 20s, and then I'm a big fan of Raul Servin, whom we're going to talk about in a minute, who probably is 75. He came to San Antonio with Hemisphere as a 18-year-old, maybe 20-year-old. Came to paint. He came as a part of a Mexican team that was going to paint the the backdrops of events concerning the voladores, the flying Indians, and he stayed. He liked it here, and he stayed. Got married, has a family, became a citizen, of course. So Servin is, in my looking at all his work over many years, I'm a big fan. Is very Mexican, and he has the most Mexican interpretation of the treaty and of the war than anybody else I've seen. You know, you'll see we'll see some things there, and they bring it up to kind of up to date. But he's got the he thinks constantly about being a Mexican. He's never, you take the Mexican out of the country, but you can't take Mexico out of his soul and heart. And he is as closest to what Mexicans. Uh, you could take his art to Chihuahua, Mexico, and they would say, "Oh yeah, that's exactly what happened. That's you know the U.S. invasion, they call it,
Mm,
the U.S.
yeah,
invasion,"
yeah.
and
Well,
that's Edwin.
well, let's look at some of this artwork and have you walk us through it
Okay.
a little bit about what the themes are. What are they what are they expressing about Segundo de Febrero through this work? So let me just cue that up.
And we'll try. Sometimes the themes are a little. Let's go to Servin.
Okay.
If we can find him.
Yeah.
Well, that's of course is the. Okay, this is Servin. And Servin he has a lot of the things going on. And I think what you see here, and what's interesting is in the front you see the indigenous, and the indigenous is sort of a, you might recognize some kind of celebration, not necessarily the treaty, but just kind of a celebration. And then, of course, he often puts in the Virgin Guadalupe, it's in the middle. And I interpret that fellow there is someone, a Mexican patriot. In the background is the Mexican eagle to his shoulder, which of course says, Mexico. Then there's another eagle that looks a lot like the farm workers eagle, which means that's Mexican American. And then the baby there perhaps represents the birth of our culture, of our people. The birth of the Mexican American community is right there with the treaty. But I just, I would love to talk to him some more about it, in terms of the indigenous celebration, because the indigenous represents Mexico at its best. I mean, that's the core. I mean, that's the heart of Mexico is the indigenous population, because everybody else has sort of gone the modern way. And I see the flag there is someone who is got wrapped with a flag, and it has the Mexican. I'll look at it some more. Yeah, it has the Mexican eagle. Mm-hmm. So that's really kind of a partial American flag and it's partial Mexican flag.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The merging of the two flags.
Indeed, it's a merging. Mm-hmm. And some people use the word assimilation. It's a kind of it's a little hard to explain, but I think there's a merger of culture. There's an acceptance of different things of the culture, and acceptance of, we didn't celebrate Febrero DosDos probably up until the cultural groups, the art groups, mm-hmm. thought it was something, but the community doesn't celebrate it like Cinco de Mayo, and
right.
Budweiser goes into LA and becomes a sponsor of Cinco de Mayo, and next thing you know, they have 1 million people at their parades.
Right. And the other thing is that Cinco de Mayo is something that even in like the 1920s, you had Mexican American groups commemorating Cinco de Mayo as a point of pride.
Right.
And particularly, Fiestas Patrias type of thing. But I am not aware of Segundo de Febrero being recognized by those Mexican American civic groups until much later.
I agree.
Much later, yeah. All right. And I also notice that he has incorporated a few little political moments here on the shoulder of I'm not 100% sure who that's supposed to be holding the baby, but on the shoulder, it says vote wisely. And then in this kind of heart shape next to the baby, it says, olvídate del Alamo. And it's the Alamo before they built the parapet on the top, because that parapet, it was a later addition. Anyway, so
There's a lot of, he has a lot, he was influenced by the hemisphere.
And
And if
they've
you
got the
look,
hemisphere logo
yeah,
there
he's got the
too.
hemisphere tower.
Yep, that's there
He's
in
got
the
the hemisphere
middle.
tower. And then to the right of the Virgin, you have, to me, batos. I mean, look like,
Yep,
I mean, like
yep.
zoot shooters.
And some sort of souped up cars here. Yeah, I think this is a zoot suiter too.
He tends to put a lot of different imagery and ideas in his work, and don't put it past the fact that that is right where the looks like a balloon. It almost looks like a car.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And oh yeah, there is a car below that.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a yellow car, and then which is that's Servin. It's classic Servin kind of deals. He has a lot of ideas and he puts them into one piece of work. But his signature, I mean, it could be that the hemisphere is there because that's what got him here. That's why he came, and it's more. It has nothing to do with the treaty and nothing to do with Mexican War. That's how I got here with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, let's look at another image. Let's see. What do we have next? We've got Mauro Murillo.
Yeah, so this is an interesting Mauro Murillo, whom I met. Very talented young artist. And I wrote that the coyote has two meanings, and one is kind of an unconquered natural beast or animal that still it thrives. There was a war, and they urbanized, they did everything, but a coyote survives. He's a survivor. That's one idea. The other idea is that now with the whole discussion of immigration, the coyote is the person who is helping people cross the border, and they call him a coyote because he's a leader. He's a person that they call upon. So when you hire a coyote, it's because you want to cross the border. I don't know all the language and what he wrote there, but he basically there's a sort of a celebration, and that's the guitar signifies a sort of a celebration, but the clothing of the person with his arms outstretched is serape poncho. It's very Mexican. So he basically says, we're Mexicans, and today we're acknowledging February 2nd. We're acknowledging our Mexican roots, but we are Mexicans. And I think you could have different ideas as to what the coyote would be. Is either a survivor of we crushed the the army, and later groups of people crushed everything, but the coyote survives. Or, as I was saying, it's kind of many of us are here because of coyotes.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the next one.
So I think this is an occasion to make a statement about February 2nd, but it's also an occasion by which people say, okay, I think about this time, and I think about who we are and how we got here. One of the things we don't celebrate is our how the community has many languages. There are people who I've talked to that are Zapotec and understand only Zapotec, and they live in Oaxaca, and now they have immigrated to Los Angeles, and they learn Zapotec, no Spanish, and a little English. So same thing with colors. And so some people want to say, look, let's not forget that we are one people, but we have numerous colors.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'll go to the next one.
So this is Juan Nepomucemo Cortina. So Cortina is living on the border in Brownsville, Texas in the 1840s. And he is known as the sole major rebel to contest the Texas Revolution and the land grab, as it was known. So Cortina, basically in 1850s, takes over, rides into Brownsville with a bunch of ranchero friends. A land has been taken from his family, and he takes over Brownsville, Texas. Then to drive him out of Brownsville, they sent a lieutenant colonel by the name of Robert E. Lee. And Robert E. Lee is a very good warrior, and he eventually drives Cortina out of Brownsville and settles down. But a lot of people talk about the fact that Robert E. Lee got his experience as a warrior on the border of Mexico, fighting individuals who contested the idea that Texas belonged to them, and then later becomes a general. And so that's two famous personalities, Cortina and Robert E. Lee, in the same town. And so that he's a hero to the people because he defended a ranch hand who had been mistreated in Brownsville, and he went over there to teach the sheriff a lesson not to mess with his ranch hand friends.
Yeah, and Cortina is somebody who, in the years after this, especially I think in the Chicano movement, was embraced as a hero. Right?
Indeed, yeah, he's one of the early heroes. So you basically you would say that he might well be the first Chicano hero, or the first Mexican American hero, or the first Mexican de este lado hero. I don't know that there's too many more before Cortina. I guess you could say that Seguin was a hero, Juan Seguin. You could say that the Navarros might be heroes, but these Cortina basically went to war against the U.S. Army.
He was so much more ready to fight back,
right,
than what we saw from a Seguin or a Navarro, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay, so Ricardo Zamora has just started. He's retired. He lives in McAllen, Texas. His brother is Emilio Zamora, who's a historian, who can do this lecture with his eyes closed, hands tied. Anyway, Ricardo is his brother, and Ricardo has become a new artist. And this is the very first exhibit for him. He brought this piece over to my house, and we look. I think I've photographed it right there in my driveway. But I said, we got to get you in the show. And what it is obviously Jesus is going to go over the wall with the help of Mary, and then Joseph Joseph is up on the top, Jesus in the middle, and Mary is handing Jesus to Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
And they're gonna, and it's a really interesting sculpture piece. Ricardo is a former graduate from college, went on to become a financial advisor, and in his retirement years has now turned to art. And this is, I think this may be his first art piece. He's done a lot more since.
Yeah. And so obviously this is a drawing from the Bible, but also placing it into contemporary times. Because of course the biblical story being that baby Jesus was being pursued. And here people who do cross the border are also pursued by Border Patrol and now
Well,
ICE, right? Mm-hmm.
yeah, absolutely. They had to flee. They were persecuted. And they fled, and this is part. So now they seek a better place, a better life. Yeah.
Yeah. Very powerful. Okay, let's go to the next one. Another Servine.
Yeah, this is so Servine has done numerous pieces where he believes that the solution is for the community to rise up and vote. And he said, if we don't vote, we'll lose our rights. We'll never have peace. And what he does is this is 2024 piece that he did. He places, I think sort of animals in contrast to exactly who he wants to fight. I mean, so when I watched the movie Sinners, it's a John Philip Santos said, "Man, this is an amazing cultural exploration," and I thought it was all going to be culture, but without giving away too much. By the way, Sinners has got the most Academy Award nominations with 16. Ultimately, in the middle of the movie, we have vampires. And so I think that what we see is sometimes you have figures there that you're striking out and you're being, there are people who are against you. And certainly I would say that his left hand is trying to push away somebody who and he goes on to say, vote is the way you do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So don't fight them on the something, beat them at the election.
Yeah, don't fight them on the streets, beat them at the election.
Yeah, so that's basically says that's a fight taking place. And that's not how we're going to move forward. You're not going to be able, and interestingly in a way that the fight is with these particular figures that represent sometimes evil people. So
yeah. Okay. Let's go through another one. This is Chuck Vega.
Yeah. So Chuck Vega, who goes strictly mostly one time just by Czech. I think Czech's now 40. I keep thinking about him as being a young man. I knew him in his 20s. Czech sort of talks about anger or he also talks about contesting about the struggle And he believes that the struggle must continue, and he puts sort of these teens in this position. And of course, and when you look at it thoughtfully, you see, okay, what is this chain about? We're sort of chained down as a, we're not, we can't get out of this anti. I don't know what, all the things that he sees, but certainly the hands are maybe biblical as well.
Yeah, yeah. He's definitely using a lot of symbolism here. And, he's somebody who I think as a very young artist, he came out of being very much influenced by graffiti art, street art. And you see those elements here, but you also see how he's talking about things that you see a lot in Chicano art. Of course, La Virgen de Guadalupe and religious symbolism, but he's also mixing that up with some pop culture imagery, from like punk music, but also local things that we would definitely know about here in San Antonio. He's got the Alamo upside down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like Servin. He has a lot of things in there, and I think I looked at it 2 or 3 times before I saw the chain.
Yeah.
Sort of you're kind of like we're chained down. I said, oh my God, look at that. And of course, the yellow represents the Virgin Guadalupe. That's the crown of the Virgin Guadalupe, and the middle part, the middle part represents the teen, but also pop culture, and how we need to resist certain things. We need to, the Alamo being upside down. We can't buy all the propaganda that was being sold to us about the Alamo and the war. Slavery had a lot to do with the Alamo, but then he throws in his own concepts about religion and symbolism. So yeah.
All right, let's look at another one. Ana Hernandez Burwell.
So I haven't met Ana Hernandez, I don't think, Burwell, but here is a really interesting application of historical material with pop culture and the use of natural elements. So in this one, if you look at the cactus comes out right away. The cactus is a Mexican icon. If you want to say to somebody, I want to paint something that has, that has Mexico in it, you might throw in cactus. The bandolier represents the conflict, war. It could be, the Mexican Revolution lives in our community, lives in our, we talk about this. And of course, what makes it kind of unique is the 2 figures, in kind of a more dramatic and more, I won't say hip hop, but really kind of, it strikes me as youthful energy, and I see there is a chain there. It could be breaking the chain, and this is our culture, and our culture has cactus and it has pottery in it, but
it reminds me a lot of back in the Chicano movement. There was a recurring visual motif that a number of different artists adopted, where they would show three faces, and it was the African, the Spaniard,
Yeah.
and the mestizo, right?
Right.
And in a way, this is a little evocative of that, but it's women, and it's got more of these natural elements. But
Right.
you can see there are little snippets of things evoking, for example, the Virgen de Guadalupe with the gold stars on the blue background.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, the symbolism is great. And I'm not sure, are these the things that the Spanish soldiers wore?
Well, you know,
I don't know.
there's definitely colonialism
Mhm.
implied here because of the particular neck
Yeah.
there
Yes.
is
Yeah.
the old
The
is
ruffled.
so
Yeah.
it's basically could be we're breaking the chains of colonialism,
Mhm.
and that figure is sort of like the one on the left with the rose
Mhm.
is sort of like a historical figure, and one on the right is more like a modern figure.
And she's more Tejana.
Yeah, it could
Yeah.
be Tejana,
Mhm.
but you're right. The stars both
Mhm.
behind in the background, and it throws a lot. It's sort of like you can almost say a student of Servine because she throw a lot in there. I mean,
Yeah.
you know the deer, the heart. Those are things to say. The fish,
Mhm.
the rabbit. So there's a
Mhm.
lot. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
There's a lot there for conversation.
Yeah. It's very striking piece.
Yeah.
Okay, let's check another one.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, here's a group of people at the exhibit. So as you said, this is an exhibit that has now been going on for, I believe you said this year is the 49th year?
49 years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So there's a following for this exhibit.
Yeah, there is. I
Mhm.
have talked to them. I took this photo, and you know, it's interesting is that you and I are looking at these, and I haven't looked at them for a while. So as I look at them, I say, what was I thinking 2 years ago when I saw this? You know, I was struck by this certain imagery. I have conversations with people, and what you and I are talking about, they might have 10 different interpretations.
Yeah.
You know, some would say, "Okay, I see this. This is about Pancho Villa because you see the bandolier here." You
Mm.
know, it's kind of I love it because there isn't any right answer
Mhm.
to this to a lot of this art. There isn't any right answer.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, even if you're looking at the Mona Lisa, you think, okay, I know what this is all about. No, not necessarily. So this
Yeah.
is even more interesting. Yeah, I
Yeah.
enjoy the shows. I enjoy
I
seeing
think
people.
we have a couple more. Let's see what we've got
Sure.
here. This is a Manola and Maria Ramirez.
Manola and Maria most often paint something together. They're two sisters, and they have a shop on Presa Street, and they have done murals. I met them when they did a mural in the South Side. They're both, I think they both went to UT Austin.
Mm.
They're very, very dedicated. They their life is all about art. They have a little art gallery shop, gift shop, and you walk in and they're there with scissors cutting something for a collage, or you know, while they're waiting to do another commission. They're very interesting young women, and tradiciones. You know, I think in terms of there's a moment here we're celebrating the evolution of Mexican Americanism. We're the day for us, for many people, is this is when we became Mexican Americans, and they're sort of saying um, we have managed to maintain and keep our traditions, our tradiciones. You know, we in one level you could say we haven't assimilated. You know, we're partially assimilated, maybe, but this one says we're not assimilated at all. This is a very powerful Mexican kind of the costume, something that Mexicans would paint. Mexicans, not Chicanos, but it's kind of like you see the roosters there.
Yeah.
You see the butterflies. Butterflies, it's a lot easier. They signify migration. You see the figure there with an Indian headband. It could be a Toltec Indian. It could be an Aztec Indian. Those are part of the tradiciones. We have Indianismo. Indianismo is very powerful. Indian heritage is powerful. We embrace it. How we do the hair might be Indianismo. But then tradition shows religion is powerful. This figure could have some angel wings connected to her. But and also interesting is the color. The color isn't not even a mestizo color. It's a very unusual dark color. So she's Indian or mestiza, and there are people all over San Antonio and the Southwest who can identify with that color.
Okay, let's see one more. What are we doing here? Oh.
Well, that's an interesting piece. So, De la Frontera, to me, as I saw it, of course, the very first thing you see is a woman, and behind her are these commemorative kind of stones. And one of them says, kind of like on this side is the United States of America on the left, and then on the right-hand side, Estados Unidos, Mexicanos. So it's kind of like a border references,
Yeah.
Here's where the border meets, and it's got Mexican influences, of course, with the flowers and especially with the maguey plant. And the woman is resting, relaxing, in thought, thinking. Maybe she's thinking, what's going to become of me? When ice comes. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a peaceful piece. It has that heart right above her, and it has looks like an eagle. But I think it's a very peaceful, thoughtful piece. She's at peace with herself, and knows that she doesn't have any shoes on, so she's really relaxing. Yeah, I think you have different interpretations. I saw it as a very peaceful, just somebody who right there thinking about her two cultures, and surrounded by maguey and Mexican plants. It's kind of like I'm okay with this.
I think the way that her body straddles the border like that, it just, to me, it's very evocative of Gloria Anzaldua's work. Thinking about how we as Mexican Americans, we straddle these two lands, right? Yeah.
Gloria Anzaldúa, absolutely, yeah.
Let's see. I think we're coming towards the end here. Oh, this is an interesting piece. It looks like a collage. Maybe it's just dimensional painting here.
So I don't know Allison. Probably met it. It is kind of, I think what's the most powerful thing here is the coyote. And this is a coyote howling at the moon, as Rufino Tamayo would do many of them. But it's interesting because the coyote, the surrounding figures include a shark, a lizard, and then plants. So it's sort of a celebration of nature. And then the coyote is a very, very important figure in Indian lore. Nothing to, if you go to the Pueblo villages of New Mexico, and you see a painting there with a coyote howling at the moon, it has a totally different meaning than Chicano or Mexican.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they may see the coyote as a very important object or important animal in their society.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's like this coyote is speaking to the universe, and
Yeah.
the universe is filled with these other creatures, and we're all connected.
There's plenty of universe there, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's see what else. Oh, there's Czech again.
Yeah, that's for that piece.
Yeah, it's a large piece.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
I think I spoke to him about it, and there was Ashley Mireles is coming up.
Yeah, here we go.
Ashley is very talented artist, and also does a lot of printing stuff. She in this particular piece, it could be autobiography there with, but the woman there in the center could be her, and yet there's danger lurking. There's a snake there, and then there's somebody like in a bush there to her left with a. Is it a friendly person? We don't know. But also she knows that there's a coyote right above her, and then there's also cactus right above her as well. She tells this urban ecology, but up above her says Reconquista, the reconquest of the. So Reconquista is used a lot by Chicanos as the recon. So we the idea that Aslan is a reconquista of the people who were conquered, but they have conquered and taken over the land. But some of these things can be, it could be that in her family experience, there was somebody, like to her right that looked like that person. That could be, a grandfather. That could be a father. I know her father, so I don't know if that's his father or not. But just sort of a sort of blending of nature. You have a young doe, you have a coyote, you have a rabbit, and you have a snake. It could be a blending of a nature, and we somehow or another, nature is always in a contest and a battle with the urbanization.
Okay, let's look at the next one. Oh, here we have a three-dimensional piece.
I believe I talked to the artist of one of the three-dimensional pieces, and they this particular piece I didn't get to meet Mauro de la Tierra. I don't think so. If I did, it was very brief. But the three-dimensional pieces, they're kind of in a class by themselves. I mean, you have someone who has some kind of has purposely devised a figure that looks very devilish, very sort of out of a horror movie, and the fact that his both legs are torn off tells you it might be a horror movie. Somehow or another, these are figures. But if you look at the writing on it's actually a Border Patrol agent.
It's fascinating because in Mexican folk art, you see so much paper mache, and in particular, paper mache devils are common, but he's taken that and put it in the American context of who are the people to be afraid of here. and dressed him in that Border Patrol. I don't know if it's supposed to be like a little Kevlar vest or what. I'm not sure, but
it's a Border Patrol vest, and it does say the word border.
Yeah.
I think patrol. But you know what's interesting is that this is like 2 years ago. This last year. In the last 12 months, if you were to make a figure, there would be evil, a demon. I wouldn't be surprised it would be ICE. They don't. The Border Patrol are people who were just like policemen. ICE is a whole different ballgame. So I expect that come September, I already got my notices about being. Come DosDos, or coming the new show that Malena and Ruth have together. I just got a note saying it's going to be there next week.
Okay.
And I'm going to go to it. But I wouldn't be surprised if you have a different change of costumes, a different change of figures, and that will be ICE. ICE will be in somewhere either in the paintings or in the three-dimensional figures.
Probably, yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think we've got. Oh, here's a fabric piece.
Yeah. This particular piece, I did talk to. Her name is Burgundy Rodriguez, and I love the title. I deserve to be in this show. I think it's sort of a combination of a fashion statement, a cultural fashion statement. And when they say, you know, my dress and my fashion, I have incorporated this, you know, this little serape there with her, and then in the flag, and it's kind of like, this is an art show, and I'm coming in with my serape and my somewhat assimilation. I love New York, and I think I deserve to be in this show.
I think this is the very last one.
Yeah, this is Gilbert Martinez. We put this on the cover of La Prensa for that after that week of 2025, and it was so last February. You saw this on the cover of La Prensa, which I photographed and took to them. I think it's sort of celebrating, sort of, you know, the mobility, the outdoorness, and at the same time, on the top left is a guy with the paletas, and so he's like doing this for a living. And then in the middle part is somebody with a dog on the backpack. I'm doing this so that my dog can have a good ride. And then on the bottom, you have somebody who's joyful with an umbrella. We're having fun. We're gonna go have some fun. Equally with the guy to the left with a boombox music. So basically, it's more of it's not anything connected historically to February 2nd. But on the other hand, maybe he says, I see a lot. I'm intrigued. I like all this motion. I like all these people on their bikes, and that's part of who we are.
Yeah, you know, it reminds me a little bit of almost like a combination of a casta painting in terms of showing us types. And I mean, if you're of a certain age, you might remember that there used to be these school folders that you could buy for school that had prints that looked very similar to this. But usually they were playing different sports. But so they were called peachy folders. Yeah, something like that. But what I see here is different, what we might think of as types. so we've got the paleta bike vendor, and he's got his cowboy hat and his jacket and his boots, the exaggerated toe tips.
Yeah.
And then we've got like a more athletic couple right here. I don't know if they're together or not, but they both look more sporty. And then these folks down here, they've got a lot of elements of like Cholo culture in them. So like this one with the way his shirt is buttoned at the top, and this one with her hoop earrings and her dark rimmed lips and her dramatic eyebrows. So we've got a little bit of like different types of Mexican Americans.
That's right. I think it basically said we come in. Not the other person said we come in all colors.
Yeah,
and they're all different types. And you're right. I mean, I think by the virtue of I used to like bikes. The kind of bikes you have, there's a bike there to the right underneath the paleta. That's a bike for the long run. That could be. And then you got on the bottom corner or the right, there's a little bike with two people on it.
Yeah.
That bike, you can't go very far. I mean, you'd be lucky if you could go a mile on it. But it's a fun bike. It's a bike for the park. It's a bike for riding around the neighborhood. In contrast to the guy that has a boombox, it's a big bike, and he basically ride around town with it. But because he has his music with him, it's not a short ride. I mean, he's ready to be on that bike all day long, or with his bike all day long.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So I think that is our last slide, but why don't you tell us a little bit about, if we're interested in going to see the exhibit, where can we go and see that? Centro Cultural Aztlán is one of our oldest, if not the oldest extant Chicano art gallery in San Antonio. They not only initiated the annual celebration of Segundo de Febrero in San Antonio, but they also were one of the earliest groups to really help revitalize Dia de los Muertos in our community.
Oh, yeah. So this year's event, the 49th annual Segundo de Febrero, is going to commemorating the signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo 1848. Will happen February the 2nd, on opening reception, February 2nd, on Monday, from 6 to 9. And contact Malena Gonzalez at the Centro Aztlán.
Okay, wonderful. So folks can head out there on February the 2nd, and I'm sure the exhibit will be up for a couple of months, but you can find out more. Yes. I'm going to put a link up below, and we hope to see you there.
Okay, well,
thank you, Dr. Romo.
Dr. Gould, thanks to you.